Hello children, it's Mr. Farrier here. I'm going to do an assembly today and it's based on our new value for term 6. But before I tell you the value of term 6, and hopefully you'll remember what the value is, I'd like to read this story called the Starfish Story because it leads into, quite nicely, the value of this term. So I'll read it carefully to you. You can probably see it on the screen. It's called The Starfish Story. It's written by somebody called Lauren Isley, I think in 1969, so quite a few years ago now. In fact, 1969 was the year I was born. So this is called The Starfish Story. An old man had a habit of early morning walks on the beach. One day, after a storm, he saw a human figure in the distance moving like a dancer. As he came closer, he saw that it was a young woman, and she was not dancing, but was reaching down to the sand, picking up a starfish, and very gently throwing them into the ocean. "Young lady," he asked, "why are you throwing starfish into the ocean?" "Well, the sun is up, and the tide is going out, and if I do not throw them in, they will die." "But young lady, do you not realise that there are miles and miles of beach and starfish all along it? You cannot possibly make a difference." The young woman listened politely, paused, and then bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it into the sea, past the breaking waves, saying, "It made a difference for that one." Now, that's a really, really important and well-known story, actually, because it tells you that however small, you do make a difference in our society, in our life, on our planet Earth. So it's really important to make the right choices and do the right things. So this value that I want to talk about today, and I'm going to just put my screen back to the beginning, is about responsibility. Being responsible is quite a hard word to explain. So I've put two definitions on the board about what being responsible means. So the first bullet point says it's being in charge of something, including your own actions. So when you're in charge of something, you are the person that's responsible for that. So if you're in charge of a game of football, you are responsible for how that game went. If you're in charge of a school like I am, then you are responsible for what goes on in that school. If you're a doctor, you're responsible for your patient, the person that's in the hospital, and so on. It also means having control of something. So it means you are in control of something. That's what it means being responsible. So for instance, you might be responsible for a pet, your pet hamster or guinea pig or rabbit, and your parents might say to you, "You're responsible for looking after that animal." And it's a very big responsibility to make sure you take care of that animal, that take care of that pet, make sure it's fed well, cleaned properly, and given love and attention. So responsibility means having control of something, that you are in charge of something, and you are in charge of your own actions as well. So if I did something, it'd be my responsibility how I did that, okay? So I'll try and explain a little bit more about what we're responsible for. So have a think about this. Think about all the things that we, or you, are responsible for. What are you in control of? What are you able to change? Well, I think the first point I want to make is we are responsible for, number one, looking after each other. That's got to be the number one thing. Very, very important that we are responsible to look after each other. I'm responsible to make sure you are safe, and you're responsible for your family around you. You're responsible for how you treat your brothers and sisters, and you have to look after each other. It's really just quite clear. And in times like this, where you're in lockdown and can't always see people that you want to see, and things are perhaps tricky at home, it's important that we look after each other, okay? And we'll talk about how we can do that in just a moment. So the next thing we're responsible for is making the best of ourselves. And I put in brackets there, learning. And what that means is that we're responsible to learn. We are responsible because if we didn't want to learn, we didn't start thinking about things and wanted to read and want to do maths and do all those things that we're asked to do at school, and I know a lot of you are doing that at home at the moment. If we didn't do that, we would never improve on things. So for instance, if you weren't able to read properly, you wouldn't be able to learn and acquire more knowledge and skills. So it's really important, for instance, if you didn't learn about the maths or how to do work out problems and calculations, it'd be very difficult for you to know how much things cost and how much money you need to spend on things, how much change you'd get back from that. So learning is really, really important, and we're responsible for that. We're responsible for our own learning, making the best of ourselves. We're also responsible for taking care of our planet. Now, it's really key that we look after our planet, because our planet's going to be here for a long, long time, and we need to make sure we look after it. We treat it really well. We pick up litter, we plant trees, we do lots of things that we can do to help our planet. I'll go through some more examples in a moment. We're also responsible for our own actions. I mentioned that earlier, that we are in charge of how we act and how we do things and what we say. So if you say something, you're in control of that, and what you do, you're in control of what you do. So try and make sure your actions are good actions and helpful actions, and we can talk about the examples there. So for instance, if we go to number 1, an example of how we can look after each other would be to be kind to each other, to offer help. So your parents might be cooking you a meal, you might say, well, can I offer to wash up, or to help clean the dishes, or to help do chores around the house, and to help make the bed. So we can offer help, and we can be kind to each other. We can also keep in touch. So if there are people you haven't seen for a while, your grandparents or friends that you haven't seen, you can write to them or FaceTime them or contact them somehow. So it'd be really good to keep in touch. That's a sign that you're looking after each other. That's the way we can do that. So, number 2, how can we be responsible for making the best of ourselves? Well, we can work hard. So rather than just, not doing any work, we can actually go, I'm going to work hard, because it will help improve the way I think, what I can do. And it's all about improving yourself. So working hard is an example of what you can do to help yourself. You can keep practicing at something. Now, this is an opportunity where you've been in lockdown, where you might want to practice a skill, like a musical instrument or football skills or whatever it might be. You can perhaps keep practicing and get better at that. So keep practicing. That's an example of how you can help better yourselves. And also the other thing is never giving up. That's another example. Just don't give up. If you're finding something tough or you're struggling with something, try and push through that. Try and ask for help. Try and work it through, and you'll get better at something. So that attitude of never giving up is really important to help your responsibility of making the best of yourself. The third way in which, an example of how you can take care of the planet, the third point was that you can do things like pick up litter. And I know, some people do, unfortunately, throw rubbish around in plastic bags and that sort of thing. And we need to sort of look after the environment, look after our planet. You can also recycle and reuse things. And I know a lot of you are doing that. Our school is a bit of an eco school, and we try and look at reuse things, and we turn off lights, electricity and things like that. So we try and recycle, reuse things. And I mentioned planting a tree. In all seriousness, that will help our environment, by planting a tree. And the fourth thing, how can we show an example of how we can look a bit responsible for our own actions? Well, by making good choices. So just make the right choices and learn from our mistakes as well. So if you make a mistake or you've made the wrong choices, it'd be important to try and learn from that and think, what can I do next time that's better? And the other thing, which is really quite important, is don't blame others. Quite often adults say, take responsibility for your own actions. And what that means is, don't blame other people for something you've done that's not right. Just try and make the right choices in the future. Okay, so that's hopefully helping you understand a little bit about what the word responsibility means. Okay? So I've put on the board here how to be a responsible person. So the first bullet point there says, when you agree to do something, do it. If you let people down, they'll stop believing in you. So quite important, if you agree to do something, just make sure you do it. And hopefully people will then trust you to do things in the future. So that's part about how to be a responsible person. Second bullet point, answer for your own actions. I mentioned this earlier. So don't make excuses or blame others for what you do. So if you've done something wrong or you've done something right, then be responsible for that. That was my decision, that was my choice, and I take responsibility for that action. Okay? Take care of your own matters. And I've put an example there. Don't rely on adults to remind you when you're supposed to be somewhere or what you're supposed to bring. So if you're asked to bring something with you, maybe a water bottle to school, for instance, and you've forgotten to bring it, and you say, oh, well, it was my mum's fault, she didn't pack it for me, or she didn't do this, or she didn't remind me. Well, sometimes it's, you have to sort of take responsibility for your own actions and say, well, actually, it was my responsibility to bring that water bottle with me, therefore, I will do what I'm supposed to do and not forget it. So try and do things on your own accord without relying on other people to tell you all the time what to do. And the other thing about how to be a responsible person is to be trustworthy. That means make sure you are an honest person, and if somebody trusts you to borrow or take care of something, then take care of it. So if you're borrowing something from a friend and it's a toy of theirs or something very precious to them, make sure you look after it and make sure you give it back in the way that you found it. And that's about being responsible, isn't it? And being trustworthy. People then will trust you and realise that you are a responsible person. Always use your head. So that's another way in which you can be a responsible person. Think things through and use good judgment. So it's very easy to get things wrong sometimes and make the wrong choices, but you've got to think it through and say, what will be the consequence of my actions if I do this? So always think, what will happen if you make something happen, if you do something? What will be the result of that? So think about how you can always make the right choices. So I think we're at the end of my one last point. Don't put things off. When you have a job to do, do it. So if your parents, for instance, ask you to tidy your room, don't put it off and say, yes, I'll do that in a minute, Mum, or in a minute, Dad. Do it. Don't just wait and wait and wait, because people will think you're not a very responsible person then. But if you do things when you're asked to do it and you don't put it off, that shows that you are a responsible person. So this term, we are concentrating on responsibility. That hopefully will help you understand what being a responsible person means. Have a good look at that and see whether you can put that in action. I think the last slide is my poem. Yeah, so that's where I started with. So have another look at that poem. And you can make a difference. You can make a difference by being a responsible person. I hope